I want to start with a simple truth: pain is part of the deal. None of us get through life without facing it. Loss, failure, heartbreak, disappointment, they come for all of us, and when they do, they leave a mark. But here's what I've learned. That mark doesn't have to be a scar, it can be a story. It can be the foundation of something extraordinary. We live in a world that tells us to hide our pain, to push it down, to move on as quickly as possible. But what if I told you that your pain is actually a doorway to something deeper, something greater? The people who inspire us most, the ones who change the world, who lead with courage, who create beauty out of brokenness, aren't the ones who have never suffered. They are the ones who took their pain and transformed it into something meaningful. That's what greatness is. It's not perfection. It's not a life free of suffering. It's choosing to take what hurt you and use it to build something stronger. I know this is hard because pain makes us want to shut down. It makes us want to retreat, to protect ourselves. But what if instead of running from it, we leaned in? What if instead of numbing, we felt? Instead of hiding, we shared? Owning your story is one of the most powerful things you will ever do. It means standing in the truth of your experiences, both the beautiful and the painful, without running, without numbing, and without pretending to be someone you're not. It's easy to tell the parts of our story that make us look good, the accomplishments, the victories, the moments where we shined. But what about the chapters we'd rather skip? The ones filled with heartbreak, failure, shame, or loss? The parts where we got it wrong, where we were hurt, where we felt unworthy. Owning your story means embracing all of it. It means acknowledging the pain without letting it define you. It means accepting the messy, imperfect, and vulnerable parts is just as important as the strong, triumphant ones. Because here's the truth, you can't selectively edit your story and still expect to show up fully in your life. The cost of not owning your story: when we don't own our story, we give other people the power to tell it for us. We allow shame to fill in the blanks. We let fear dictate our choices. And worst of all, we lose the opportunity to shape what comes next. We try to outreach run our past by pretending it didn't happen. We bury our struggles deep down, hoping no one will ever see them. But pain that is buried doesn't disappear, it festers. It shows up in unexpected ways, in anxiety and self-doubt, in the constant feeling that we're not enough. Think about it. How often do we hear that voice in our head that says, "Who do you think you are? You're too broken. You'll never be enough. If people knew the real you, they wouldn't love you." That voice thrives when we hide, but when we own our story, we take our power back. Rewriting the narrative, owning your story, doesn't mean being proud of every chapter. It doesn't mean pretending the pain didn't happen or that the past wasn't hard. It means choosing what the story means to you. You get to decide, is your pain just a wound or is it a lesson? Are your mistakes proof that you're a failure or evidence that you've learned and grown? Is your past something to be ashamed of or a testament to your resilience? Every great story has conflict, struggle, and setbacks. But the hero isn't the one who never fell. The hero is the one who got back up. And that hero is you. The power of speaking your truth, one of the hardest but most freeing things we can do, is speak our truth out loud. When we name our struggles, when we share our pain, when we stop pretending to be perfect, something incredible happens. Shame loses its grip. Shame thrives in secrecy. It tells us we're alone, that no one else has felt what we feel. But the moment we share our truth, whether with a close friend, in therapy, or even just with ourselves in a journal, we realize we are not alone. There is strength in vulnerability. There is healing in honesty. When you own your story, you stop living in the shadows. You step into your truth, and that truth sets you free. Your story isn't over. Maybe you've been through things you never thought you'd survive. Maybe you've carried burdens that weren't yours to carry. Maybe you've made mistakes you wish you could undo. But hear me when I say this, your story is not over. You are still here. You are still writing your next chapter. And when you own your story fully, completely, with courage and grace, you give yourself the power to shape how it unfolds. So, stand tall. Own every part of who you are, because your story isn't just worth telling, it's worth celebrating. We live in a world that tells us to be strong, to be tough, to keep it together no matter what. We hear messages like never let them see you sweat, don't show weakness, push through, and don't complain. And so we learn to put on armor, we hide our struggles, we pretend we have it all figured out. But let me ask you something, is that really strength? Is strength pretending we're fine when we're falling apart? Is strength shutting people out when we're desperate for connection? Is strength forcing ourselves to carry everything alone when we're drowning? That's not strength, that's fear. Real strength is vulnerability. It's the willingness to be seen as we are without guarantees. It's the courage to say, I don't have all the answers, I need help, I'm struggling. And that kind of strength, that's where true power begins. Why we fear vulnerability, if vulnerability is strength. Why do we run from it? Because vulnerability requires risk. It asks us to open ourselves up, to let down our guard, to be seen in ways that might not always feel comfortable. And deep down, we worry, what if I show my true self and people don't accept me? What if I open up and get hurt? We've been conditioned to believe that vulnerability is weakness, that showing emotion makes us fragile. But the truth is, it takes far more strength to be vulnerable than to hide behind a mask. Think about the people you admire, most the ones who move you, who inspire you, who make you feel something real. Are they the ones who act like they have it all together? Or are they the ones who show up with honesty, who share their struggles, who aren't afraid to be real? The most powerful leaders, the greatest artists, the most impactful human beings aren't the ones who pretend to be invincible. They are the ones who stand in their truth even when it's uncomfortable, because vulnerability isn't about weakness, it's about authenticity. And authenticity is where connection, healing, and growth begin. The power of vulnerability and connection. Have you ever sat across from someone, opened up about something hard, and heard them say, me too? That moment, the moment when you realize you're not alone, is where the magic happens. That's the power of vulnerability. When we pretend to be perfect, we push people away. But when we're real, when we're honest, when we let people see the messy, imperfect parts of us, we invite connection. Think about your closest friendships, your deepest relationships. They weren't built on perfection, they were built on shared experiences, on late night conversations where walls came down, on moments when you let someone in and they stayed. That's what vulnerability does. It creates bridges. It reminds us that we're all human, that we all struggle, that we're all figuring things out as we go. And that kind of connection, it changes everything. Vulnerability in failure and growth. Vulnerability isn't just about relationships, it's also about growth. Every great achievement, every big dream, every bold move requires vulnerability. Because stepping into the unknown, trying something new, putting yourself out there, it all comes with risk. What if I fail? What if people judge me? What if I'm not good enough? We all ask these questions. But the people who do great things aren't the ones who never feel fear. They're the ones who feel it and show up anyway. Think about an artist sharing their work with the world, a leader standing up for something unpopular, an athlete stepping onto the field knowing they might lose, a person starting over after heartbreak. They don't know how it will turn out. They don't have guarantees, but they show up anyway. That's vulnerability. And that's real strength. Letting go of the armor. So what do? How do we embrace vulnerability when everything in us wants to protect ourselves? We start by letting go of the armor. We stop pretending that we have it all together. We stop avoiding the hard conversations. We stop numbing our pain just to get through the day. Instead, we allow ourselves to be seen. We take off the mask. We admit when we need help. We let people in even when it's scary. And when we do, we don't become weaker. We become braver. We become more connected. We become free. Because the strongest people aren't the ones who never fall. They're the ones who have the courage to stand back up and say, this is me, I am still here. Shame is one of the most powerful and destructive emotions we can experience. It's that deep internal voice that whispers, you're not enough. You're unworthy. If people knew the real you, they wouldn't love you. Shame doesn't just make us feel bad, it isolates us. It convinces us that we are alone in our struggles, that no one else has felt this way, that our flaws make us unlovable. But here's the truth, shame cannot survive empathy. Shame thrives in secrecy and silence and judgment. But the moment we share our struggles with someone who meets us with understanding, with kindness, with acceptance, shame loses its power. It shrinks, it dissolves. Because the antidote to shame isn't perfection. It isn't working harder or proving ourselves or pretending we're fine. The antidote to shame is connection. What is shame and why does it hurt so much? Shame is different from guilt. Guilt says I did something bad. Shame says I am bad. Guilt is about behavior. I made a mistake. I can learn from it. I can make amends. Shame is about identity. I am the mistake. I am not worthy of love or belonging. And that difference matters. Guilt can be a motivator. It pushes us to do better, to apologize, to grow. But shame paralyzes us. It makes us feel like no matter what we do, we will never be enough. Shame makes us hide. It makes us put on a mask. It keeps us from reaching out, from speaking up, from stepping into who we really are. And worst of all, it makes us believe that we are alone in it. Why empathy is the cure, shame is a liar. It tells us that if people knew our struggles, they would reject us. But when we finally open up to someone we trust, when we say, this is what I'm going through, and they say, me too, or I hear you are not alone, that moment changes everything. Empathy says, I see you, I hear you, and I'm staying. Empathy reminds us that we are not alone. It gives us permission to be human, to be imperfect, to struggle. And when we feel seen, when we feel accepted, not for what we pretend to be, but for who we truly are, shame starts to fade. Because shame cannot survive when it's met with kindness. The power of sharing our stories. Think about a time when you felt deep shame about something. Maybe it was a failure, a secret you carried, something from your past that made you feel unworthy. Now, think about the moment you finally shared it with someone, a friend, a mentor, a therapist, even a stranger. Chances are, the moment you let those words out, something shifted. Maybe the person listening didn't judge you. Maybe they told you they understood. Maybe they had been through something similar. And suddenly what once felt unbearable felt a little lighter. That's the power of storytelling. That's the power of vulnerability. When we share our shame, we take away its ability to control us. We bring it into the light, and in the light, it loses its grip, creating safe spaces for empathy. If empathy is the cure for shame, then we have a responsibility to offer that kind of acceptance to others. We all know what it feels like to carry shame. We all know how heavy it can be. So when someone opens up to us, how we respond matters. We have two choices. We can respond with judgment, making them feel even more alone. Or we can respond with empathy, giving them the gift of being seen and accepted. Empathy doesn't mean fixing. It doesn't mean giving advice. It doesn't mean trying to make the problem go away. Empathy simply says, I hear you. You are not alone. That is enough. Releasing shame, embracing connection. Shame wants us to stay quiet. It wants us to hide. It wants us to believe that we are the only ones who feel this way. But when we choose vulnerability, when we let people in, when we receive empathy instead of judgment, we realize that shame was never telling the truth. We are not broken. We are not alone. We are worthy of love and belonging exactly as we are. Resilience, it's one of those words we hear all the time, often attached to stories of incredible strength, people who have overcome unthinkable hardships, who have risen from failure, who have turned pain into purpose. And we often think of resilience as something you either have or don't have, like a personality trait you're born with. But here's the truth, resilience is not a gift, it's a skill. And the best part, if resilience is built, that means you can build it too. What is resilience really? Resilience isn't about never struggling. It's not about avoiding pain or pretending you're okay when you're not. Resilience is the ability to get back up after life knocks you down. It's the capacity to adapt, to grow, to keep going even when things feel impossible. It's not about being unaffected by hardship, it's about learning how to move through it. People often mistake resilience for toughness, but true resilience isn't about shutting down or powering through without emotion. It's about allowing yourself to feel, to acknowledge the hardship and still choosing to rise. Resilience is built in the small moments. We tend to think of resilience in big, dramatic ways, surviving a tragedy, coming back from rock bottom, beating the odds. But resilience is built in the small, everyday moments. It's built when you face rejection and try again. It's built when you fail and learn instead of quitting. It's built when you have a hard day and still choose to show up for yourself. Every time you face something difficult and choose to keep going, you are strengthening your resilience muscle. Think about a time when you went through something you didn't think you could handle. Maybe a heartbreak, a job loss, a betrayal, a failure. In the moment, it felt unbearable. But here you are. You made it through. And whether you realize it or not, that experience made you stronger. The science of resilience, psychologists have studied resilience for decades, and they've found that it's not about being mentally tough or having a perfect mindset. Resilient people don't avoid stress, they learn how to navigate it. They develop habits and thought patterns that help them bounce back. And the good news, these skills can be learned. Some of the key building blocks of resilience include emotional awareness, understanding your feelings rather than suppressing them. Cognitive flexibility, being able to shift perspectives and reframe challenges. Self-compassion, speaking to yourself with kindness instead of self-criticism. Social support, leaning on others instead of isolating yourself. Growth mindset, seeing failures as learning experiences rather than dead ends. When we actively develop these skills, we don't just become more resilient to life's challenges, we become stronger, more adaptable, and more capable of handling whatever comes our way. Resilience is a choice, not a feeling. Many people wait to feel resilient before they act. They wait to feel confident before taking a risk. They wait to feel strong before facing their fears. But resilience isn't a feeling, it's a choice. It's choosing to get back up, even when you don't feel like it. It's choosing to believe in yourself, even when doubt creeps in. It's choosing to take one more step, even when the path is uncertain. Resilient people don't wait for perfect conditions. They take action despite uncertainty. They move forward even when they're scared. And every time they do, their resilience grows. How to build your resilience if resilience is built, not born. That means you have the power to strengthen it. Here's how. 1, reframe challenges as opportunities instead of asking, why is this happening to me? Ask, what is this teaching me? Every challenge holds a lesson. Resilient people don't see setbacks as permanent. They see them as part of their growth. 2, develop a self-compassion practice. You can't build resilience if you're constantly tearing yourself down. Instead of beating yourself up over mistakes, talk to yourself like you would a friend. Instead of saying, I'll never get this right, say, I'm learning and improving every day. 3, build a support system. Resilient people don't go through hard times alone. They lean on their community, whether it's friends, family, mentors, or therapists. Asking for help isn't a sign of weakness, it's a sign of strength. 4, strengthen your mindset. Resilience is built through perspective. When something goes wrong, train yourself to think, this is temporary, this does not define me. I will find a way through this. Your thoughts shape your ability to bounce back. 5, take small, brave steps every day. You don't have to overhaul your life overnight. Resilience is built through daily choices, choosing to face discomfort, choosing to keep going, choosing to believe in yourself. Small, consistent steps lead to unshakable strength. You are more resilient than you think. If you take one thing from this, let it be this: you are already resilient. Think about everything you've survived, every challenge, every heartbreak, every failure that you thought would break you but didn't. You are still here. And that means you are stronger than you realize. Resilience isn't about avoiding struggle. It's about learning that you can get through it, that you will get through it. And that with every challenge, you are becoming someone even stronger. So when life knocks you down, remember this: resilience is not something you were born with. It is something you build, and you are building it every single day. Pain is inevitable. At some point in life, we all experience it, whether it's heartbreak, failure, betrayal, loss, or disappointment. No one is immune to suffering, but pain by itself doesn't make us wiser. It doesn't automatically shape us into stronger, more insightful people. If that were the case, everyone who has gone through hardship would come out of it enlightened, but we know that's not always true. Some people let pain define them. They become bitter, resentful, or stuck in the past. Others, however, choose a different path. They take their wounds and transform them into wisdom. They refuse to let their suffering be wasted. That choice to turn wounds into wisdom is where real growth begins. Pain is a teacher if we let it be. Pain is a way of getting our attention. It shakes us awake, strips away illusions, and forces us to confront things we might have ignored. It's uncomfortable, but it's also an opportunity. Think about the hardest moments of your life, the ones that truly tested you. Maybe it was a devastating breakup that taught you self-worth. Maybe it was losing a job that forced you to chase a new dream. Maybe it was a personal failure that pushed you to grow in ways you never expected. At the time, it probably felt unbearable, but looking back, you can see how it shaped you, how it forced you to see things differently, to change, to evolve. Pain, when met with reflection, becomes a teacher. It shows us what matters, who we are, and what we're capable of, but we have to be willing to listen. Wounds that don't heal become barriers. Not all pain turns into wisdom. Some pain, when left unprocessed, turns into walls. Unhealed wounds can make us guarded, suspicious, or unwilling to trust again. They can make us see the world through a filter of fear. They convince us that protecting ourselves at all costs is more important than living fully. For example, a broken heart can either teach us to love with more awareness or make us afraid to love again. A failure can either teach us resilience or convince us never to take risks again. A betrayal can either sharpen our discernment or make us believe that no one can be trusted. Pain will shape you one way or another. The question is, will it make you wiser or will it make you smaller? Turning wounds into wisdom isn't about pretending the pain didn't happen. It's about refusing to let it define your future. It's about healing, learning, and using what you've been through to make better choices moving forward. How to turn wounds into wisdom. So how do we do it? How do we take our pain and transform it into something meaningful? 1, acknowledge the pain instead of avoiding it. You can't heal what you refuse to face. Many of us numb ourselves to pain. We distract, avoid, bury, or suppress it. But ignoring it doesn't make it disappear. It just delays the healing process. Facing pain requires courage. It means sitting with your emotions, allowing yourself to grieve, and being honest about how something affected you. Only when you acknowledge it can you begin to process it too. Ask, what is this teaching me? Every painful experience holds a lesson, but you have to be willing to look for it. Instead of asking, why did this happen to me? Ask, what can I learn from this? Did this experience reveal something about yourself you need to work on? Did it show you something about others, who is truly there for you and who is not? Did it redirect you towards something better, even if it didn't feel like it at the time? Pain doesn't come with automatic wisdom. You have to dig for it. But when you do, you'll find that every wound carries a lesson. 3, choose growth over bitterness. It's easy to become bitter when you've been hurt. It's easy to close yourself off, to assume the worst, to let pain harden you. But wisdom requires something different. Wisdom means choosing to heal rather than holding on to anger. Wisdom means learning the lesson without carrying the baggage. Wisdom means saying, this happened, and I will not let it destroy me. I will use it to become better. Pain doesn't have to make you hard. It can make you wiser, softer, more compassionate. But that choice is yours. 4, share your lessons with others. One of the most powerful ways to turn wounds into wisdom is by using your experiences to help others. Think about how many people feel alone in their struggles, believing that no one understands. But when you share your story, when you say, I've been there and I got through it, you become a source of hope. Your pain, once transformed, can become someone else's survival guide. Your pain is not the end of your story. It's easy to believe that pain is the end of the road, that after a major heartbreak, failure, or loss, things will never be the same. And in a way, that's true. Some experiences change us forever, but different doesn't mean worse. Pain changes you, yes, but you get to decide how it changes you. You can let it close you off, or you can let it open your heart wider. You can let it make you bitter, or you can let it make you better. You can let it hold you back, or you can let it push you forward. The choice is yours. So take your wounds, acknowledge them, learn from them, heal from them, and then turn them into wisdom, because your pain does not have to define you, but the wisdom you gain from it, that can shape you into the strongest, most powerful version of yourself. Pain is a universal experience. None of us can escape it, but all of us can choose how we respond to it. The difference between those who stay stuck in suffering and those who rise from it isn't luck or strength, it's perspective. When we own our story, we reclaim our power. When we embrace vulnerability, we unlock our true strength. When we meet shame with empathy, we free ourselves from its grip. When we build resilience, we prove to ourselves that we are capable of overcoming anything. And when we turn our wounds into wisdom, we transform our pain into something greater than ourselves. The challenges you faced were not meant to break you, they were meant to shape you. They were meant to teach you, to push you, to prepare you for what's next. You are not defined by what has happened to you, you are defined by how you rise from it. So don't waste your pain. Don't let it make you bitter. Don't let it make you smaller. Instead, use it, learn from it, grow from it,